What if I told you this little church girl is a nuclear bomb? After maxing out my Phoebe day one and finally getting some decent echo rolls, I can safely say she's meta. So if you've been looking for a Phoebe build guide, I got you. I'm going to be covering all the materials you're going to need, including a full kit breakdown, on top of your best weapon options, what echoes to look for, what teams to use her on, and more. Let's not waste any time and dive right into it. If you are debating on pulling for her, her strengths do include having a unique Spectro DPS with Spectro Frazzle. As we know, with the 2.0 update, Spectro Rover actually got the addition of Spectro Frazzle, so that combination is pretty good and is honestly free to play friendly. Number 2, she could shred Spectro resistance with her Ultra skill, and there's a version of it where it can actually help Spectro Frazzle. And number 3, we have great crowd control with her Resonance skill. For Phoebe's combat roles, she falls under a main damage dealer with having Concerto efficiency and also Spectro Frazzle. And if you want to get her up to max level, here are all the materials you're going to need. For the Whisper and Core, you can actually get them to drop from humanoid type echoes, so keep that in mind. The flower we're looking for is the Firecracker Jewel Weed, which you can get from collection spots, so you can get these around the 2.0 map, or you can pick them up weekly at Rosemary's Apothecary. For your Overlord boss material, you're going to have to fight Lorelei here in the middle of the 2.0 map for the Cleansing Conch. For what skills Forte is upgrading first, definitely her Forte Circuit, then her Resonance skill, Resonance Liberation, your normal attack, and then lastly, Intro skill. And here are all the materials you're going to need to upgrade all of these skills. For the Helixes, the best way is to do forgery challenges, and since you're going to need the Whisper and Cores, I would recommend doing the Misty Forest one in the 1.0 area so you can get all these materials. And for your Calamity boss material, you're going to need to fight Jue here in Mount Firmament for Sentinel's Dagger. To maximize Phoebe's damage, we need to understand exactly how her kit works. First up, the easy stuff. She has a basic attack 3, a heavy attack, and with her midair attack, she actually uses the staff to fly in midair, which is pretty cool. So if you hold the heavy attack button, you can actually just fly through the air, which is pretty cool. She has a dodge counter as well, but the big portion of her damage is going to come from utilizing her Forte Circuit with her Resonance skill. And as a side note, with her first inherent skill, Presence, the midair heavy attack can be cast one more time, which means you can float twice. First up, with her Resonance skill, this is where the crowd control comes in. So you'll press it, you'll summon a ring of mirrors at the target location, making the target hit stagnate for 2 seconds and dealing Spectro damage. The stagnation effect can be applied up to 12 targets, and if you use the Resonance skill again, you'll actually teleport in the middle of the ring of mirrors, dealing Spectro damage. Now this ring of mirrors itself lasts 30 seconds, but it does have a 12-second cooldown, which means you can re-proc it. When Phoebe is outside the ring of mirrors, a basic attack or dodge counter that hits it will refract Holy Light, which deals Spectro damage to targets inside the ring of mirrors and pulls targets hit to the center of the ring. The damage dealt is considered basic attack damage, can be triggered once every 0.5 seconds. Essentially, it just reflects all the attacks in that area. It's pretty sick. When Phoebe is inside the ring of mirrors, her basic attack becomes Chamuel's Star, which performs up to 3 attacks, dealing Spectro damage considered basic attack damage, and the same thing actually happens to her dodge counter where it becomes its own thing. Now if you thought that was cool, her Forte Circuit really takes the cake. If you notice on Phoebe's Forte bar, she has this yellow line. This is her prayer meter. When it is full, you can either hold your basic attack or your Resonance skill to enter one of 2 modes. If you hold the basic attack, she'll perform the heavy attack Absolution, dealing Spectro damage and applying 1 stack of Spectro Frazzle to the target's hit, and Phoebe will enter what's called Absolution status, which allows her to deal more damage. But if you hold the Resonance skill, you'll cast Resonance skill Utter Confession, dealing Spectro damage and applying 1 stack of Spectro Frazzle to the target's hit, and Phoebe will enter the Confession status, which allows her to better exploit Spectro Frazzle. Now once you cast either of these skills to enter Absolution or Confession status, Phoebe will gain Divine Voice, and she can hold up to 60, and your prayer meter goes back down to 0, but she automatically gains 5 prayer every second, so it will eventually come back. Also, big thing to know, Absolution and Confession cannot coexist, so once you're in one mode, you have to exhaust all your Divine Voice before entering the next one, and we do that by using Heavy Attack Starflash. When casting your basic attack stage 3 or a dodge counter, replaces that heavy attack with Heavy Attack Starflash, which deals Spectro damage at the cost of 30 Divine Voice. Now, if you're in Absolution, the enhancement is it reduces the cost of Divine Voice by 15, which means you could do 4 of these attacks. When the targets hit have Spectro Frazzle, the skill gains 256% damage amplification. If you're under Confession, the enhancement is it applies 5 stacks of Spectro Frazzle to the target's hit. Once you use up all of your Divine Voice, you just have to wait for your prayer meter to go all the way back up again, and then you can enter either Absolution or Confession status again. And as a side note again, for her second inherent skill, Revelation, when in Absolution or Confession status, Spectro damage bonus is increased by 12%. Her Resonance Liberation and her Ultra skill do different things depending on what status you have. When using the Resonance Liberation, Dawn of Enlightenment, if you have Absolution, it increases the damage multiplier by 255%, making it a very strong ultimate. Or if you have Confession, it applies 8 stacks of Spectrofrazzle to the target's hit. Her outro skill, Attentive Heart, just like with other main DPSs, does a decent amount of damage, so you'll deal Spectro damage equal to 528.41% of Phoebe's attack to nearby targets, but it has different effects depending on what status you have. Under Absolution, it increases the damage multiplier by 255%, and then with Confession, it grants Silent Prayer to the Resonator on the field, reducing the Spectro res of nearby targets by 10% and granting 100% Spectrofrazzle damage amplification. When Spectrofrazzle inflicts damage, extends Spectrofrazzle's damage interval by 50%. This effect lasts 30 seconds or until Phoebe switches to Absolution status. So depending on the activity you're running, you can either have a nuke outro skill or an outro skill that's going to help a character like Spectro Rover and deal more Spectrofrazzle damage and have it last longer. For the left and right column upgrades, we have crit damage percentage bonus and attack percentage bonus. For Phoebe's best weapon options, her signature Luminous Hymn is your best bet, plus it looks amazing. You get a flat attack and a crit rate percentage bump. With this perk, Home Builder's Anthem, it increases your attack by another 12%. Dealing damage to targets with Spectrofrazzle grants the wielder 14% basic and heavy attack damage bonus, stacking up to 3 times for 6 seconds. Casting your outro skill amplifies the Spectrofrazzle damage on targets around the active Resonator by 30% for 30 seconds. So obviously this one is very good for her considering the amount of time she uses her basic attack, the heavy attack Starflash, the outro skill. It's really good. If you don't want to pull for a signature, that's okay. We do have a couple of other 5-star options, including Yinlin's signature, String Master. You get a flat attack and a crit rate percentage bump with this perk, Electric Amplification. You get a 12% attribute damage bonus, and when you deal resonant skill damage, it increases your attack by 12%, stacking up to 2 times. This effect lasts 5 seconds. This is pretty good for Phoebe, considering we can use her resonant skill twice back to back. When the wielder is not on the field, it increases their attack by an additional 12%. Now, I'm not sure if this applies to the outro skill, but since she doesn't have any coordinated attack damage, this second part might be useless. I'm not sure. If somebody tested it, definitely let me know. Even Zed's signature Rhyme Drape Sprouts is decent as well. You get a flat attack and a crit damage percentage bump with this perk, Panorama. You get a 12% attack increase while the wielder is on the field. Using her Resonant skill grants 12% basic attack damage bonus, stacking up to 3 times for 6 seconds. That's pretty good. At 3 stacks or above, casting your outro skill consumes all stacks of this effect and grants the wielder 52% basic attack damage bonus for 27 seconds, effective when the wielder is off field. Again, the second part of this perk is kind of useless, but this one's essentially a stat stick. Your last 5-star option would be the standard Cosmic Ripples, where you get a flat attack and an attack percentage bump. With this perk, Stormy Resolution, you get the energy regen percentage bump. When you deal basic attack damage, it increases your basic attack damage bonus, stacking up to 5 times. This one's okay. If you don't have any 5-star weapon options, don't worry, there are a couple of 4-star ones you can use. The first one being Augment, where you get a flat attack and a crit rate percentage bump. With this perk, Forgiving Resilience, when you cast your Resonance Liberation, it increases the wielder's attack by a certain percentage, lasting 15 seconds. Your next best option is actually really good for you free-to-play players, which is Ocean's Gift. You can get it from the Old Man in the Whale quest. You can actually get it up to rank 5. Again, this will be a limited time reward, so if you want to get it, definitely grind that quest. You get a flat and an attack percentage bump with this perk, Fish Catch. Dealing damage to enemies with Spectrofrazzle increases the wielder's Spectro damage by 10%, gaining 1 stack per second for 6 seconds, stacking up to 4 times, which means you can have a 40% Spectro damage bonus. The last one I'll recommend is from the 2.0 4-star weapon sets, in this case, Waltz in Masquerade. You get a flat and an attack percentage bonus, and with this perk, Rhetoric, dealing damage to enemies with negative statuses, in this case, Spectrofrazzle, increases the wielder's attack by 4%. Note this is at rank 1. For 10 seconds. This effect can be triggered 1 time per second, stackable up to 4 times. For Phoebe's best echo sets, we do have 2 options, but the best one that I would highly recommend is 5-piece Eternal Radiance. At 2 pieces, you get a Spectro damage percentage bump of 10%, but at 5 pieces, this where it gets juicy. Inflicting enemies with Spectrofrazzle increases your crit rate by 20% for 15 seconds. Attacking enemies with 10 stacks of Spectrofrazzle grants a 15% Spectro damage bonus for 15 seconds. The main thing here is that you get a free 20% crit rate bump just by applying Spectrofrazzle. At your 4-cost echo, we're looking for the Nightmare Morning Aches with a main stat of crit damage. The main difference between the regular Morning Aches and the Nightmare one is that you actually summon this one instead of transforming into it. Now, you'll summon it, it'll deal 273.6% Spectro damage, but if the target is inflicted with Spectrofrazzle, it actually gets a 100% increase, which is nice. The Resonator with this echo equipped in their main slot gains a 12% Spectro damage bonus. For your 2 3-cost echoes, we're looking for either Spectro damage or attack percentage, and for your 2 1-cost, attack percentage. And for your substats, we're looking for at least 60% crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, heavy attack bonus, flat attack, and then a little bit of energy regen. Your next best option would be 5-piece Celestial Light. If you already have a decent set, this one can be used in the beginning before you get a good Eternal Radiance set. At 2 pieces, you get a 10% Spectro damage bump, and at 5 pieces, your Spectro damage gets a 30% increase for 15 seconds after releasing your intro skill. At your 4-cost Echo, we're looking for the regular Morning Ace with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat. Like I mentioned, you actually transform into this Echo, and you actually deal damage with it, but after the transformation, you get a Spectro damage and Resonance Liberation damage increase of 12% for 15 seconds. At your 2 3-cost Echoes, we're still looking for Spectro damage or attack percentage, and for your 2 1-cost, attack percentage. And for your substats, we're looking for at least 75% crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, heavy attack damage bonus, flat attack, and a little bit of energy regen. For Phoebe's best team options, if you're free to play, she's actually decent with Spectro Rover and either Baija or Verena as your healer. Like I mentioned, the synergy with Spectro Frazzle between Phoebe and Spectro Rover is going to be good, plus there's a little bit of hot swap in between there, and then Baija or Verena as your healer is going to be good across the board. But if you wanted the premium team, just have Shorekeeper as your healer. With Shorekeeper giving the healing, the crit rate, and the crit damage bumps, and if you have her weapon, the attack damage bonuses as well, this team can be very strong. I've seen an interesting quick swap team with Phoebe, Cheng-Li, and then Spectro Rover actually as your healer. We all know Cheng-Li is great for hot swap, and with her Ultra skill, it'll buff Phoebe's Resonance Liberation damage, and with Spectro Rover, whenever you use the Resonance Liberation, it actually heals you, so if you wanted a strictly quick swap team, this one's pretty interesting. Now that we've covered all the big ticket items, let's talk about Phoebe's damage rotation. It's actually pretty easy, and what I will say is that you are more than likely going to use Absolution more than Confession mode, only because that's her main DPS form. This is where we're going to get a lot of the damage from. Whether she's already out on the field or you use the intro skill, the first thing we want to do is pop the Resonance skill so we can spawn the Ring of Mirrors. At this point, you have a couple of options. Number 1, if the enemies aren't really moving and they're stuck inside the Ring of Mirrors, you can just do your basic attack 3 and then follow up with the heavy attack Starflash and deal some crazy damage. Now, if you're facing a boss or an enemy that moves around a lot, you may want to use the Resonance skill again so you can teleport inside the Ring of Mirrors just so you can take advantage of it. Again, we want to use that basic attack 3 to the heavy attack Starflash and do that all 4 times to exhaust our Divine Voice, and then anywhere in there you can actually use your Resonance Liberation. At this point, we should be close to having our Concerto full, and we can switch to a different character to where Phoebe can perform her Ultra skill, and since she's in Absolution mode, she gets the damage bonus. Now, if you want to take advantage of Confession mode with the Spectro Frazzle, I would recommend trying to use it before her Concerto's up and you perform the Outro skill. Not only are you stacking on Spectro Frazzle with the heavy attack Starflash and the Resonance Liberation, the main benefit is going to come from the Outro skill if you're switching to Spectro Rover. Not only having an Outro skill still deal decent damage, but also with Silent Prayer, reducing the Spectro res, adding Spectro Frazzle, damage amplification, and having it last 50% longer. The last thing I want to talk about is Phoebe's Resonance Chain and if it's worth getting multiple copies of her. I was lucky enough to win my 50-50 and get her S1 Warm Light and Bedside Wishes. When in Absolution, her Resonance Liberation now has a 480% damage multiplier increase, and when in Confession mode, her Resonance Liberation increases the damage multiplier by 90% and applies Spectro Frazzle to the targets with the maximum stack the targets can receive. Her S2, A Boat Adrift in Tears. When in Absolution, damage dealt by her Ultra skill to targets with Spectro Frazzle is amplified by 120%, and when in Confession, the Silent Prayer grants 120% more damage amplification for Spectro Frazzle. Her S3, Daisy Wreaths and Dreams. When in Absolution, the damage multiplier of that heavy attack Starflash increases by 91%, and when in Confession, the damage multiplier of it is increased by 249%. Her S4, Ringing Bells and Wings Aloft. When her basic attack and dodge counterforms hits a target, it reduces the Spectro res by 10% for 30 seconds. Her S5, Prayer to the Distant Light. Casting her intro skill increases Phoebe's Spectro damage bonus by 12% for 15 seconds. And lastly, her S6, Whispering Chirps and Silence. This one has a lot, so keep with me. Targets entering the Ring of Mirrors are stagnated for an additional 2 seconds, and the stagnation effect affects all targets entering the Ring of Mirrors up to a max of 12 targets. Each target will only be affected by this effect once. When in Absolution or Confession, summoning a Ring of Mirrors with her Resonance skill increases Phoebe's attack by 10% for 20 seconds and triggers an extra heavy attack Starflash at the Ring of Mirrors location. This heavy attack Starflash does not consume Divine Voice and is not considered as casting a heavy attack. Overall, I'd say her S2 is pretty good, her S3 is fantastic, and then obviously her S6 is cracked. The main thing with S2 is having the bonuses for the outro skill, whether you're in Absolution or Confession, is just going to help out the team in general. And with S3, not only having the heavy attack Starflash increase when in Absolution, but having it increase a lot when in Confession makes Confession a lot more desirable. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Phoebe build guide and kit breakdown. When we initially saw Phoebe in the 2.0 story, I immediately wanted her. I really didn't care whether she was a main DPS, a support character, or whatever, and I was able to get my hands on the 2.1 beta at the time, and after playing her, I was like, we absolutely have to have her. She actually feels like the first character akin to a magic user. If you've ever seen Freerun, for example, if you haven't watched the anime, it's fantastic, but having the staff and the magic circles and the ring of mirrors, it just feels great. But let me know in the comments, how are your Phoebe pulls going? Or are you skipping her and going on to the Brant and Chang-Li rerun? To be honest, I have Chang-Li S2. I'm debating on pulling for Brant, but in all honesty, just having Chang-Li as my quick swap character for a variety of teams and also my S6 Chishia, I think I'm good for now. In any event, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any other woo-wah content we have dropping here on the channel. If you didn't know, we live stream here on YouTube and then also over on Twitch. That link will be in the description. At the beginning of a new update, we have Twitch drops available, so if you're trying to get some Astrite and some extra materials, definitely stop on by. Lastly, if you want to flex your pulls, your echo rolls, some gameplay, definitely join my Discord. We have a woo-wah channel specifically for that content, but we also have a variety of other channels in there, including PC Tech, anime, and more. Lastly, if you want to help the channel even more, you can look into becoming a member. Now, if you don't know what a membership is, it's essentially like a Twitch subscription, but it's technically cheaper. You'll get access to emotes, monthly badges, and the big ticket item, all of my long form videos early. So if you'd like more information, all you have to do is press the join button next to subscribe, and then I'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next video.